executives and agencies such as the FCC and Attorney General, things like that, but I also function as custodian of records in its criminal and civil trials.
All right, and is that in fact why we have you here today, is in that aspect of your job duties?
Yes, sir.
All right, so hopefully this is going to work and should hopefully be relatively simple. I'm going to do a screen share with you here. Can you see what I'm showing you on the screen?
Yes, sir.
And do you recognize these items?
Yes, I do.
And generally, what is this showing us?
These are records for calls and text messages.
And are these records that you provided to the Summit County Prosecutor's Office?
Yes, sir.
And that was by way of a subpoena?
Yes.
The records that you provided, and obviously there's different, I guess, folders or files, whatever you want to call it, files, and each one of these things has a specific or different function. Is that fair?
Yes.
But among the things that are kept in these records are phone calls and text messages.
Yes, sir.
And does it record and give in those records the dates and times of each call?
Yes, sir.
Now, along with these records, there's a lot of other information. Is that true?
That is true.
Like technical stuff?
Yes.
Like tower information?
Should be a tower list, the location of the tower, things of that nature, which is given by latitude and longitude,
All right.
among other things.
All right. And as far as the items that you see here that you've provided to this, to the state of Ohio, Summit County Prosecutor's Office, were these records kept in the ordinary course of your business by you as the custodian of the records?
Yes, sir.
And would it be fair to say that these records are an accurate copy of the ones that you keep in the ordinary course of business?
Yes.
Mr. Powell, I don't think I have any more questions for you. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome, sir.
Attorney O'Brien?
Mr. Powell?
Hi.
I'm Kerry O'Brien. I represent Erica Stefanko. You've only answered a few questions today, so my questions are going to be probably almost singular also. You keep tower records, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Typically, what would be the range of a tower in terms of picking up a frequency or call?
That's really questions better answered by an engineer, but based on my experience, it can vary depending on the terrain, whether it's flat, whether there's buildings. There's a lot of things that can affect that.
Assume, Mr. Powell, that the terrain is fairly flat.
Well, I can tell you based on my experience. Generally, we say within about 3 to 5 miles, but I've seen situations where it's further than that. But again, I can't say accurately. I mean, that's just a basic ballpark.
Mr. Powell, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hold on, Attorney LaPrenzi, unless you want to go from your chair.
Well, I can,
So
I
let's
won't
let
touch
Des-
anything.
No, let's.
All right. The only reason is I think I have to stand in front of him in order to converse with him. Mr. Powell, I'm just going to ask a few follow-up questions about that range question. So that would be the outside limits is based on your experience, correct?
Correct.
And you mentioned that that is dependent on a lot of variables, right?
Yes.
And what we're talking about there is the range. So when a phone sends out a signal or receives a signal, it tells us how far away the tower is. What we're talking about is the range, is how far the tower is from the phone in order to get that signal, correct?
Correct.
So if I'm in downtown New York City, there are towers everywhere, correct?
Correct.
And if that's the case, then there's no need to have that range of 5 miles because your phone is going to try and connect to the closest free tower. Is that fair?
That is fair. That is fair, yes.
So if there was a tower 10 miles away or 5 miles away in Wayne County, and there was a tower 15 or a quarter of a mile away, and that phone was closer to the one that was a quarter of a mile away from the location, would there be any reason for that phone to then jump 5 miles to this other tower?
Under normal circumstances, no. But again, for example, I know you, just to expand on this answer, to try to give a better understanding, if, and these are all hypotheticals, of course, if that nearest tower was inundated by calls and it couldn't take any more traffic, then the call would hand off to the next available site. But assuming that that site is available to take traffic, no, there wouldn't be any reason why the call would bypass that site to search for another.
And sir, as far as, like when you say inundated, if you were in a place like a city like New York City, the city that never sleeps, that could happen any time of the day or night, right?
Yes.
But maybe in a more rural setting or even a small community setting, suburban setting, in the middle of the week at 11:45 at night, do you expect, based on your experience, that that tower would be inundated?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Powell. I have nothing further.
Nothing further, Judge.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you, sir. We appreciate your time here today.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and sign you off. Attorney LaPrenzi, do you mind? Will you sign him off that screen?
I'm sorry, yes.
I can sign off from here, but I can't. That controls. Yeah, very good. Thank you. See that? Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Is the state ready to call your next witness?
We are, Judge. We would call Detective Michael Hitchings to the stand.
Okay, very good.
And while he's going up there, I'm going to switch this over, make the switch if that's okay.
Fair enough. Okay. Then Detective, if you would raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony or statement you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you.
Good morning, Detective. I know probably everybody in the room knows who you are, but for the record, since you're now officially a witness under oath, if you would please state your full name, spell your last name for the record.
Michael Hitchings, Hitchings.
And Mr. Hitchings, how are you employed?
I work for the City of New Franklin Police Department.
And how long have you been with the New Franklin Police Department?
Over 20 years.
Say again?
Over 20 years.
Over 20 years? And I'm not sure, for some reason, it doesn't sound like you're coming through the mic. Can you move that, the one with the white, can you move that a little? Yeah.
Better?
Yeah, I think so. Did you have any prior law enforcement experience prior to being with the New, or military experience from New Franklin, before working for New Franklin?
No, I did not.
Okay. And so, in order to be a police officer for the New Franklin Police Department, what kind of training or certifications did you have to have?
You have to go through the OPATA Academy.
All right. And did you do that?
I did.
What year did you do that?
1995.
And I'm assuming, tell us, how long is that course?
It's 6 months, roughly.
And is that an every day, 8-hour day or more kind of course?
5 days a week, 8 hours a day.
All right. And that's not only in class type work, but also physical training and tactical training?
Hands-on stuff, yes.
Okay. And you passed that course, passed the OPATA test,
Yes,
and then you've been certified continuously since that time?
I have been.
Since you became a law enforcement officer licensed by the state of Ohio, have you had additional training since then?
Yes.
What kind of training have you had?
Training for, interviewing people to crime scene investigations.
All right. And how long have you, well, I should ask you, when did you start in New Franklin, what year?
Shortly after I got out of the academy, late in 95.
And I would assume that you didn't start right investigating homicides. I'm assuming you started somewhere else?
I started out as part-time as a patrolman.
Patrolman. And I'm assuming your duties were to do what?
Just patrol the city, enforce the ORC code, assist citizens that need assistance, and pretty much it.
Do service calls?
Service calls, yes.
All right. At some point in time, then, did you change positions?
Yes.
And when did that happen, and where did you go?
The exact year, I'm not sure when. I was put into our detective bureau. I've probably been in there 12 years maybe at least now, if not
Okay.
longer.
All right, so 12 of your 20 years, did you say 20 years?
Yeah, full-time.
12 of the 20 full-time years you've been there, you've been a detective.
Correct.
And during that period of time, have you had the opportunity to investigate homicides?
Yes, I have.
And maybe we should describe for some people who may be not familiar with New Franklin, describe New Franklin for us. What kind of a community is it?
It's a rural community, bedroom communities, not a lot of businesses, just your average neighborhood community.
All right, there's no downtown New Franklin, right?
No.
All right. Would you consider it like a suburban area too? Part of
Yeah,
it?
yes.
In your 12 years as a detective, if you know, how many homicides do you believe you have been involved in investigating?
Myself being in about 5.
All right. So let's direct our attention specifically to the one that we're here for today,
Okay.
the death of Ashley Biggs, okay?
Yes.
How would you have first been notified or been asked to get involved?
I was contacted by a supervisor late in the evening to respond to a missing person where it appeared there was a struggle and some blood was on scene.
All right. And at the point in time that you were notified, I think you just said that there appeared to be a struggle and there appeared to be blood, but you did not know, number one, where that person was and whether they were alive or dead. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. So at this point, is there any exigency to find or locate this, what seems to be a harmed individual?
Yes.
Okay. So what did you do when you first got involved?
We responded to the scene on West Turkey Foot Lake Road, looked over the scene, gathered some information from some of the deputies that took a missing persons report from the Domino's Pizza.
Okay.
And then we used the phone number that was given to us, the pizza was ordered.
All right. So you actually went to the scene that night?
Yes,
Now, at that scene, and of course, you as the lead detective would not have been the first responder, but you then gather information from those people that arrived. Is that fair?
that is fair.
And you were also to observe the scene yourself, right?
Yes.
Could you describe the lighting in that back area of that business on West Turkey Foot Lake Road?
It's a small business. On the back side of it, it's pitch black. Parking lot's on the west side of the business.
I'm assuming, though, that you had flashlights to look around?
Yes.
All right. As far as you knew, there was no cars and no people ever seen at that location?
That is correct.
Okay. And when you got there, you had an opportunity to observe certain things, and based on your experience and maybe just common sense, were you able to make an assessment as to whether there was a struggle there or not?
Yes, I was.
I'm going to show you a couple pictures. Hold on, let me put them here in order. Starting with State's Exhibit number 17. Do you recognize this?
It's not on the screen yet.
Oh, it's not on your screen? Uh-oh. Oh, you know, I forgot to change this part.
Yes, I do recognize that.
And what is this?
It appears there's some debris there on the ground with some change that's kind of spewed around.
All right, and is this, you know, and when you say on the ground, what type of ground is it?
It's an asphalt, it looks like the driveway, the parking lot in the back area.
All right, and you recognize this as that scene where this took place?
Yes,
Okay. And on the lower portion of the photograph, it looks like there's some black material. What is that?
it's hard to make out. Can you zoom in on it?
Yeah, hold on one second. Just grab a pen here. Oh, that might be as far as it goes.
That's it.
Oh, there we go. Can you see that a little better?
Yeah, a little bit. I would say that's probably a pen.
Okay. And that pen has been broken, shattered?
Oh, yes.
Okay. And State's Exhibit number 16 for identification purposes. Do you recognize this?
It's a little blurry, but that's an earring.
All right, and is that this item right here?
That is correct.
All right. So it's like appears to be like a diamond type earring or a little stud earring of some sort?
That is right.
And then State's Exhibit number 19. Do you recognize this?
Yeah, the plastic piece appears to be from the phaser. They have a cartridge on the end, or we call it a taser as well.
All right. So this is the little door to the cartridge.
That's the door that will open up and come off.
This, what it's laying on, the background, appears to be not asphalt like the other pictures. Where was this found?
This is like a carpet you'd put in front of your door, welcome mat, I guess, if you want to say. And that was a bit by the side door of the business.
All right. And then State's Exhibit number 20, you recognize this one?
It appears to be another one of the plastic doors from the taser cartridge.
And that one's on asphalt though, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, and there are two different cartridge doors, fair?
There are 2 doors on those cartridges, correct.
All right. Do you know, if you recall, how, what area, and we know the one was by the door because of the mat.
Right.
Do you know how close or far from the door this one was?
Offhand, I do not.
All
I
right.
mean,
Was it in relatively close proximity to the other door?
it would have been in the parking lot, probably right in front of the door. They don't usually discharge very far.
Okay. And do you have experience with tasers or
Yes,
these
I do.
electric current devices?
Yes.
And the doors, they just come off when you fire it?
Yeah, when you pull the trigger on the taser, those doors are called blast doors. They blast off and allows the probes and wires to.
And then also, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 18. Obviously, as you were there that night, it was relatively dark, even if you had flashlights. But the following day, were there photographs, some photographs taken with daylight?
Correct.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 18, and do you recognize that?
Yeah, that appears to be the parking space towards the back west side of the building with the blood on the ground.
All right. And would that be a significant amount of blood?
Yeah, that's a significant amount of blood, I believe.
All right. So detective, so you got there and you said you checked with the pizza company, Domino's, because that's who made the call for service, right?
I talked to the deputies first, and then we made our way over to the Domino's Pizza and talked to them as well.
And you said that basically that you tried to call the number that had called the Domino's.
There were people that tried to call that number specifically.
Are you talking about law enforcement people, or are you talking about?
Some law enforcement, and then Matt Travis from the Domino's had tried to call that number.
Okay. And when those calls were made, based on your investigation, did you receive any information that those calls were ever answered?
They were not answered.
Were there calls and attempted and made to Ashley, well, I guess should I ask, did Ashley Biggs have a phone?
Yes, she did.
All right. And was that phone in fact found at this location?
Yeah, it was a small flip phone.
And were there calls made initially to that phone?
To Ashley's phone? I'd have to see the records if there was calls on
Okay.
that, but I believe so.
But based on your investigation, people were trying to call her phone to see where she was?
See where she was.
Now, obviously, once you get to the scene and you see her phone there, it becomes obvious that
There's
she's
no
not
reason.
going to answer.
That's correct.
And as far as you know, nobody was able to get in contact with her on her phone?
Nobody that I know of.
All right. So after you do that, what's the next thing that happens?
We utilized the phone number that was called the pizza shop and had Verizon get us some information on that phone
And what is it? Why do you do that?
to see maybe if they can give us it's not really exact, but a location where the phone would have been when it either made the phone call or an area around that.
So in normal circumstances, now keep in mind this is in 2012, but in normal circumstances, you would, on a missing person, try and locate that person's phone. You would call Verizon and say, hey, can you see if you can't find this location of this phone, and that takes you to the person, right?
It would take you to a vicinity so you could be somewhere close, hopefully.
Okay. So let me ask that. Have you had the occasion in the past in your job duties to look for missing people by calling Verizon to try and have their phone located so that you can locate them?
Yes,
So you use that technique to try and find the person who made the call, who ordered the pizza, by locating their phone.
that's correct.
Were you able to ever locate that phone?
No, we were not able to locate that phone.
All right. However, were you able to determine from that or any of the records that you received from Mr. Powell, anything about that phone or where that phone call was placed?
Yes.
And first of all, did you learn what time it was placed?
I believe it was 2340 hours on the 20th of June.
2340?
2340, I think.
And was there 2 calls made as far as you know?
There was another call shortly after, like 2 minutes later.
Okay.
And I would think it might have been a message or something,
All right.
like a SMS,
Okay, so there was an SMS, and that means,
text message.
all right. And that message, was that from, do we know who that was from?
From what I understand, it was from Verizon.
Okay, so the phone that was used to call the pizza company and order the pizza, what type of phone was it?
The one that ordered the pizza?
Yes.
From what I learned, it was called a phone in a box. It was like a prepaid cell phone.
All right. And on a prepaid cell phone, can you get subscriber information? Like who this phone belongs to?
Usually not.
All right. So if I have, a phone that I buy from Verizon and get on a plan, you would be able to find out who that phone is registered to or whose subscriber is on that phone, right?
Yes, I would be able to.
Okay. But if I go to Walmart and I buy one of these phones in a box, that subscriber information isn't available unless they purposely put it on there.
Correct.
And you could purposely put it on there, correct?
I believe you can.
These phones in a box, are they used based on your training experience in other types of criminal activity?
People do buy these phones so that you can't be tracked, I guess, with your personal information. So I can't find out where you live, your social security number, your date of birth, all those things.
So they come in very handy if you were dealing drugs and making transactions over the phone?
Objection.
Overall.
Yes.
All right. So in this occasion, you learned that it's a box phone, and you learned that there's a couple calls made right around the time that the order was placed.
Correct.
Were you able to determine at any time approximately the locations, and if so, how do you learn that, of where the phone was when the calls were made?
From the Verizon records that we got back,
All right.
we learned that the phone with the call at 2340 and this SMS at 2342 were in a proximity. I say it's not exact. They don't give you a pinpoint location, but it was right there near the scene of the crime.
All right. And was the tower, so it gave you a vicinity, but it also gives you the tower, and that tower was located in New Franklin and it was bouncing off of?
Correct.
It was not in, huh?
I said correct.
It was not in Wayne County?
Correct. It was in New Franklin.
It wasn't near Mount Eaton Road?
No, it was not.
In regards to that phone, well, let me just kind of skip ahead a little bit only because we're talking about this topic of the phone. You heard Special Agent Soraya talk about doing a search warrant at the 15007 Mount Eaton Road address.
Yes.
And who lived at that address as far as you know?
That would have been where defendant and her husband and the children lived.
Okay. And you heard him say that there was a search warrant executed, and in that search warrant, was there anything of value found regarding that phone?
On the phone?
Or possibly of value regarding the phone?
On some of the data, it showed that the phone was in that area at one point or another.
Okay. So like earlier in the day, that phone may have been used near Mount Eaton.
It would have been in that area of Mount Eaton Road, correct?
Did you find anything regarding minutes?
Yes.
What did you find in regards to minutes?
During the search warrant, a receipt was found in the trash can at the residence at 15007.
Now, when we talk about minutes, and for those people that maybe don't know how these box phones work, how do they work with the minutes? If you don't have a service, if you're not a registered customer, how do you get to use the phone?
You can go to multiple stores, different stores sell them. You can go buy an air card with 15 minutes, 10 minutes, a half hour, whatever, and then you can load that onto a specific phone.
So you get a card, and does it have some kind of a code or a number on it?
The card would have a code on it.
And then once you buy that card, you scrape it off,
Correct?
and then you load that, you enter that number into the phone and somehow it then gives you minutes?
True.
Okay. And so you found a receipt for minutes for Verizon, correct?
Yes,
And the phone that was supposed to have been making the call was from Verizon?
that is correct.
And so did you then try and backtrack to see if you could link those minutes that were purchased on that receipt to that phone, or who may have?
Yeah, we got a hold of Walmart and asked them if they could check their security video to see who was purchasing the minutes that were on that receipt. And they were able to get video for us.
And so from that video, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit number 95. Can you tell us what this is?
That's a picture of Chad Cobb, Erica, and the children leaving Walmart.
And on that receipt that you found, was there anything other than the minutes purchased?
No,
And those minutes that were purchased, was there some amounts?
there was two 15-minute air cards.
All right. And what was the date that this video was captured these individuals?
This is on June 18th of 2012.
All right, and do you recognize the individuals in the photograph?
Yes,
And who are they?
I believe, well, I know Chad Cobb.
Adults.
The adults, Chad Cobb and Erica, lying at the time.
All right. And this would have been somewhere around 6:30 in the evening, 2 days prior to the phone call.
It says it's actually 1935, so it's 7:35.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
7:35. And where is that Walmart located?
Wadsworth, Ohio.
Now, were you able to somehow verify at all whether those minutes actually went onto that phone?
Those specific minutes, I was
Yeah.
not able to say they were on that phone.
Okay. However, was there information from the records given to us by Verizon about minutes being loaded?
Yes, on June 20th, and I'm not sure the exact time, but there was 15 minutes loaded onto that, on the phone that ordered the pizza.
All right. So it was a 15-minute phone card that was used to load that phone.
Yes,
And
the Verizon records show that it had a 15-minute balance as of June 20th.
All right. And that was in the evening hours?
Yes,
All right. All right, so let's come back now to, and that happened later on in the investigation, is that fair?
that's fair.
Okay. So at this point in time, you're trying to find the phone, you can't find the phone. What do you do now? You've got no people, you got no cars. You do know what kind of car she's driving, that Ashley Biggs was driving. Is that fair?
That's fair.
And so, other than that information, what do you have to go on?
At that point, we just have to have cars, and we put what we call bolo out, having other agencies try to help us locate the vehicle,
And what does BOLO stand for?
be on the lookout.
Okay. And so you got other agencies looking to see if this car is driving around,
Correct.
okay? And who is Brittany Dunson?
Brittany Dunson is the girlfriend to Ashley Biggs.
And was she there at the scene, or in New Franklin at least?
She wasn't at the scene, she was at Domino's.
All right. And were you able to obtain information from her that might have been useful?
We learned that there was a custody dispute between Chad Cobb and Ashley Biggs.
And did she describe it as friendly or otherwise?
Otherwise,
All right. And as a law enforcement officer and detective, does that then give you something to work with?
yeah, it points us to at least check that direction to see if there's something that would actually be fruitful out of that.
And what efforts did you take at that point?
At that point, we started to try to find information about Chad. We already knew where he lived from them, any vehicles they may drive or own, and then start looking for those situations, so we can
All right.
determine what to do next.
And so one of the vehicles that was owned, or if you recall, what or how many vehicles did they own?
I knew they had another truck, that work truck that they had came up,
The service vehicle?
service vehicle, the Lincoln Navigator, and then I believe Chad had a pickup truck, if it was.
Okay. So of those vehicles, were you able to locate the vehicles?
We located the black Lincoln Navigator.
All right. And at some point in time, you located the service truck?
Correct.
And where was the service truck found?
It was parked at the house on Mount Eaton Road.
Okay, so that was in the pictures we saw yesterday with Agent Soraya, is that fair?
That's correct.
And that service truck, you heard me ask him some questions about that truck being searched or examined?
Yes,
And he said it would have been done, but he couldn't recall it.
that's correct.
Were you there during the search warrant?
Yeah, it was my search warrant. I was at the house after we got it signed. I drove over there.
And do you have a recollection of that vehicle being searched?
The vehicle was checked.
And was there anything of value or anything of interest in that vehicle related to this incident?
There was no evidence value of the vehicle.
All right. And there was also another vehicle, I think, that was there that looked like it was being worked on.
I believe so, but I can't remember. I didn't see a picture of what it was.
Okay, that's fine. Would it be fair to say that any vehicles on the property, as far as you know, were checked for any relevant evidence?
We checked inside the house, outside the house, backyard, everything.
All right. So you mentioned that of the vehicles that they owned, you ultimately were able to find the Lincoln Navigator,
Correct.
okay? And we heard testimony from the officer a couple days ago, I think it was a couple days ago, how he found the vehicle.
Yes.
Did you in fact end up going there to yourself?
Yes, I did. I responded to the address on Rex Lake Road.
All right. And when you went there, who was there?
My sergeant was there. Some deputy sheriffs were there assisting, and Glenn Hargett, Officer Hargett was there.
All right. And I guess as far as anybody non-law enforcement?
Anyone not, the black Lincoln Navigator was located behind the back garage, detached. There were some children in the vehicle. Erica Lyon was there, and Chad Cobb was there.
All right. And based on arriving at that scene, were you able to get any helpful information from anyone there regarding the location of Ashley Biggs?
No.
So at this point in time, you have no further information regarding Ashley. All you have is a Lincoln Navigator hidden behind a barn with a whole family basically in it, except for Mr. Cobb, we know was in the woods.
Correct?
And you know that they're involved in a custody situation.
Yes.
All right. Would that also keep you suspicious as to those individuals being involved?
For the fact that I couldn't get any answers, yes.
All right. At that point in time, did you know that there was a phone call made, or that they would have had anything to do with that phone call?
I just know that a female made a phone call
All right.
at that point.
And of course, were you aware that the name of the phone caller was Jen, or given as Jen, according to the Domino's people?
At the time, I did not know that.
Okay. And even if you had, obviously Erica is not Jen by name, so that would not have necessarily helped. Is that fair?
Correct.
All right. Was there anybody else other than that family there at the residence?
I believe the grandparents were in the house.
Okay. Is that the Tallmans?
That is the Tallmans.
So at this point in time, you've got clearly a suspicious situation. You've got a missing person, a lot of blood. What are you trying to do now?
We're doing anything we can basically to find Ashley's vehicle, so some of our guys are checking different areas, waterways, pretty much anywhere you can think of check just to look for her.
And I should have asked you, what time do you recall being at the Tallmans with Ms. Lyon and her family?
I'd have to look and see what the record is, somewhere around 4:30 maybe.
In the morning?
Yeah.
All right. So at this point, everybody's just looking for
Yeah.
Ashley, and what are you doing at this point?
At that point, we ended up going back to the office. We took Chad Cobb, and later on, Erica was brought back over to the office to see if we could talk to everybody.
All right. While this is all going on, at some point, do you then get a call from Wayne County?
Yes, we got a call from Wayne County Sheriff's Office referencing them finding the vehicle.
All right. And also, I guess I should mention, at this point, you don't know where she could be. She could be right there in Franklin County, New Franklin, Summit County, she could be anywhere, right?
Hours later, she could have been out of state.
Were you guys searching all the lakes and boat ramps and things of that nature?
Yes.
So you get the call from Wayne County, and of course, they tell you what?
They found a vehicle in a cornfield, and it matched the license plate from Ashley Biggs' vehicle.
All right. And then, from that, do you end up going to that cornfield
Oh, I did.
and you observed the vehicle there?
Yes.
And of course, Ashley Biggs' body.
She was in the back seat, correct.
Let me back up just a little bit because I skipped over a photograph. When you were at the scene at Rex Lake Road, and you said you saw the Lincoln Navigator, was it still in the location that the officers had found it?
Yes.
Did you examine around the area?
We checked the area around the vehicle.
And when you did you notice anything unusual?
Directly behind the vehicle, there was a crate, a milk crate, and it had cleaning supplies, scrub brush, and some brake cleaner in it, I believe.
All right, and I'm going to show you what I marked for as state's exhibit number 104. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
That's the milk crate with the 2 cans of some kind of cleaner, lacquer thinner, or and some, looks like brake fluid.
And scrub brush?
Scrub brush is in the middle, yes.
Okay. And that, let me mark this as state's exhibit number 123. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
And what is it?
It's the milk crate we were just talking about with the cleaning stuff and scrub brush and brake cleaner.
All right. Now, you said it's brake parts cleaner, is that what it is?
Yeah, I believe it's clean.
Yeah. Now, I guess it would be official here. What is it?
Brake clean,
All right. And it's, what is it for?
brake parts cleaner.
All right. And then this
Mineral spirits,
and this.
that one's a lacquer thinner.
So now you're at the field, you've got BCI, as we know, helping you out, collecting evidence, processing scenes. And we heard testimony that they just would collect it, then turn it over to you. Is that fair?
Yeah, any evidence that they would collect, they turn over to our agency.
Which is why you're bringing it to us and giving it to us now.
That's correct.
And when you collect that evidence, then do you make the determinations as to what to do with that evidence?
Yeah, we usually have a meeting and sit down and decide what evidence is probative, which is going to get us a result that we're looking for.
And you were aware because you saw him, but were you aware of the stature or size of Chad Cobb?
After I seen him, yes.
And he's a rather large fellow, is true?
Yeah, I believe he's like 6'2", yeah, over 200 pounds, I believe.
And as the investigation progressed, particularly as we heard there was a lot of evidence located at his property that had what appeared to be blood on it, did he appear to be the person of most interest to you?
Yes.
Okay. And as a detective, were you thinking that this crime at this point was committed solely or committed by a female?
I don't, we believe that Chad was the perpetrator who actually committed the actual homicide himself.
All right. And to this day, that is still your belief?
Yes,
All right. However, did you also consider the possibilities of him having assistance?
yes, I did.
And what was it about this crime that made you believe that there was assistance given?
When we learned that a female had made the call for the pizza,
Okay.
obviously we had to look in that direction as well.
All right. Did you find at the crime scene any cars?
Which crime scene?
The West Turkey Foot Lake Road.
There was no vehicles there at the scene,
All
correct?
right. But we know that her car was taken away,
Correct.
and we know that she was deceased.
We would have learned that later, yes.
So would it be fair to say that she wasn't driving?
It would be fair to say she was not driving.
And if he drove the vehicle away, how did he get there?
Well, somebody else would have had to drop him off.
And when he dropped her car off in the field, were you wondering, or was it a concern to you as to how he then got to where he ended up?
I was thinking that someone picked him up at the field at that point too.
So based on those things, you were looking for possible other suspects.
Correct.
Being that it was a female voice, who did you think might have been involved?
At the time,
Overruled.
we believed it may have been his wife, Erica Lyon.
All right. And in fact, she was found with him hiding behind the barn.
That is correct.
In the testing that you decided to have done at BCI, I guess what was the purpose of testing the items you chose?
We were looking on those items specifically to see if there was evidence that Ashley Biggs' blood was on those.
All right. Connecting whoever wore those items to Ashley's
To
homicide.
Ashley's death, correct.
And did you in fact find those things?
Yes,
So Ashley's blood was on several of the items that were found behind his house.
multiple items, yeah.
And do you have any opinion or belief that those items were Erica Lyons versus Chad Cobb's?
No.
So who, in your opinion, were they?
The clothing, the mask, I believe was Chad Cobb wearing.
All right. In regards to trying to connect the person that may have dropped him off, made a phone call, and picked him up, what kind of physical evidence or scientific evidence could you have possibly looked at to find that person?
Seeing that there was no cameras that were available in any of those areas, there would be no physical evidence. It's just going to be somebody who drove the car, dropped him off, and made the call.
It would have to be some other type of evidence.
Right.
So in this situation, where your belief is that whoever helped him merely drove, I should say merely, but drove him, dropped him off, picked him up, and there would be no scientific evidence that you could have utilized to help prove that.
That's true.
As the case progressed, obviously, we all heard that Mr. Cobb ended up pleading guilty.
Correct.
And when he pled guilty during that process, was it were you part of the, I guess the team, whatever, to prosecute Mr. Cobb?
Yes.
And in that effort, did we, or you and the team, attempt to elicit information from his defense counsel at that time, whether Erica was involved or not?
Yes, we did.
Was that successful?
All right, not for now. Overruled, go ahead.
Was that successful?
No, it was not.
Did you let it lie?
I did let it go.
All right. However, during that period of time, even though Mr. Cobb was pleading, did you do any other, take any other efforts to monitor or, I guess, watch to see if there was anything of interest that Ms. Stefanko, at the time Ms. Lyon did, that might aid you in your investigation?
We monitored the jail phone calls that were going in and out between Erica and Chad. Pretty much anything Chad called, I listened to.
All right. And of course, it announces on every call that you're being recorded.
Yes,
All right. So they were aware of that.
they would be.
Oh, wait a minute, yes, I do. And is one of the tools that you use to look at social media?
Yes,
Now, of course, in the last 8 years, social media has changed and exploded, right?
drastically.
But at that time, what would be one of the more common ways for people to have social media?
Facebook back then.
Okay. And did you try and monitor the Facebook pages related to, associated with Erica Lyon?
I did.
All right. And how did you know they were Erica Lyon?
You get on Facebook, you can do a search. I found pictures of her that has her name on it at the top of the page, and then there are pictures of her kids and her family and stuff there.
All right. And was she making posts?
Yes,
And was there one post that you found that was somewhat interesting?
you could say that, yes.
And what was, if to the best of your knowledge, when was that post?
It was after the homicide was committed.
All right. Now, were you able to date the post and determine when it was, when she posted it?
The exact day, no.
All right. When did you find it?
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, on the bottom of the page, I think it's
Well,
sometime.
let me show you.
Take a look.
I'll show you what is marked as State's Exhibit number 122.
It was 10/15 of 2012.
So October of 2012. So
Correct.
that would have been about 4 months from the time that Ashley was murdered, but several months yet before Chad had pled.
That's correct.
So I'm going to show you 122. And what is that?
It's what you call a meme.
And who is that in the picture?
O.J. Simpson.
And what do you know about O.J. Simpson?
He committed a homicide in California.
Well, did he?
I believe so.
What was he legally?
What's that?
Legally, he was found,
He was found guilty.
he was, O.J. Simpson?
What are you asking? Sorry.
O.J. Simpson was found guilty of murder?
Exactly if it was, I'd have to go back and look at it. It's been a
Okay,
while.
you don't remember? Okay. But what does it say on the meme with O.J. Simpson smirking?
Your Honor, am I allowed to read the whole thing?
Yes, you can.
Okay. 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one.
Was there any explanation with that post?
No, it was just a meme posted on Facebook.
And it was posted by Erica Lyon, by the name on the thing, on the post above it?
The way the Facebook shows, it was on her Facebook wall.
Okay. Now, during this investigation, I know we talked about the scientific evidence, But during the process, when you processed, or when BCI processed that Lincoln Navigator, you were, I guess, looking to see if there was any connection to Ashley Biggs in that Lincoln Navigator, correct?
Yes,
And you, in order to do that, you have to swab certain parts of the vehicle.
yes,
And then those swabs, which is like a Q-tip, right?
correct.
That swab is then given to BCI, and then they actually do the testing on that swab. Is
Yeah,
that
they
fair?
analyze it.
And in order to do that, they may find unknown DNA in there.
Correct.
So what do you need to do in order to determine whose DNA it is if it's not necessarily Ashley Biggs?
You would need to get DNA samples from other people, individuals.
And people that might expect to be there.
Correct.
So the owners of the vehicle.
That would be correct.
And one of the owners of that vehicle, and I don't know who, do you know who technically was the owner of that vehicle?
I think it was in Chad's name.
All right. But we know that she was that Erica and Chad were both in the vehicle at the time,
They used the vehicle, yes.
and that was one of the vehicles that they used.
Correct.
So did you attempt to get Erica's DNA as a reference sample?
I did.
And you went and got a court order for that sample, didn't you?
Yes, I had to.
And after that court order, did she refuse to give you the sample in spite of that court order?
Yes, she did.
And ultimately, she was brought before the court and found in contempt for that refusal. Is that fair?
That's correct.
So during this time, after Chad has been pled and sentenced, do you completely forget about this case?
No, I don't just forget about it.
Okay. Clearly, there's still some female out there that made that call.
Correct.
And of course, that's of interest to you
Yes,
and I guess Ashley's family, right?
that would be true.
So do you continue to work on that?
Yes.
And so what do you do?
Periodically, you try to do things. I mean, I've made appointments, went to see Chad in prison,
Okay,
Try
why did
to-
you go to see Chad in prison?
attempt to see if he would want to cooperate and tell us who the other party was that was involved in making the phone call.
All right, and so let's talk about what made you think that even though he was approached by the prosecution team to elicit information about who was involved, and you were turned away initially, now he's been sentenced, what made you think that he might change his mind now and tell us? Why would he cooperate?
I mean, sometimes people change their mind, so
Well-
they just do that.
Let's talk about the circumstances of his life at that point in time. Where was Erica?
She was living back at home.
And what was her living situation?
She had ended up moving Mike Stefanko into the house with her.
And did she have another child?
She did.
And whose child was that?
The child belonged to Mike Stefanko.
And so with that information, and did you know the relationship between Chad and Mike?
They were very good friends from growing up together.
And with that information, did that make you feel like he might just want to give you some information?
That's one avenue. That's what I was
All right.
hoping.
I mean, obviously they got divorced,
Correct.
and he was somewhat scorned, right?
I would assume most men would be.
And
That's his personal opinion, overruled.
and so you go to talk to him.
Correct.
When you first go to talk to him, what do you find out? Do you get any information?
First time I met with him, he didn't want to talk to me at all.
All right. And you turned around and went home.
Turned around, drove back home.
And that was in Erie, where was it?
Lake Erie Correction Institution.
All right. And of course, when you talk to him, obviously, ultimately, he sent you a letter, is that right?
He did. He sent a letter that he dated in December of 2017.
2017. Is that the first time you heard from Chad Cobb about the events of that night?
Yes.
Now, you've got this letter. It has information, obviously, and we won't talk about what the contents were, but was that helpful to you in regards to furthering the investigation?
It gave me an avenue to start traveling, yes.
And as far as like taking that and going, okay, we've got our evidence, let's go arrest Erica Lyons, you didn't do that.
Correct.
Were there concerns regarding just having Chad Cobb's statement to prosecute?
Yes, I would want more information from other people, maybe to corroborate that information.
Because you have a convicted murderer who's been scorned, who might have a motive to lie, to hurt that person, fair?
Fair.
All right. So you then wanted to go find corroborating evidence?
That is true.
You also had the issue of him being able to testify or not against his spouse, fair?
True.
And that was more of a legal issue, correct?
Yeah, it's something that I can't control.
But in that letter, as a result of that letter, did you go interview somebody else?
Eventually, we ended up interviewing Cindy Cobb.
All right. And when you interviewed her, what did you learn?
That I learned she ended up making a tape recorded conversation at a residence over in Rittman, I believe, Doylestown area.
And when did you meet with her about that?
I'm not sure the date that she dropped it off, but she had came into the station and dropped off the recording.
All right. And did she drop it off the same day you talked to her about it?
We briefly talked, but I don't remember everything that was said. I wanted to listen to the video or the audio tape and get back to her.
All right. And did she give it to you? Did she give it to you without hesitation at that point in time?
Yes,
All right. But she did not seek you out to give you that tape.
she did not. We reached out.
All right. And when did you say you got that tape?
I believe it was in January of, I don't want to misquote it, 18.
Okay. And so that would have been, when did you say the letter was from Chad?
In December of 2017,
So about a month or so later, 1 to 2 months later.
approximately.
Okay. And then based on that, now you had that recording and you had her own statement,
Correct.
and then you took further action. Is that fair?
That's fair.
At that point in time, you also were able to interview Mary Brinkman,
Yes,
and she gave you a statement.
she did.
And then after that, at some point, you actually went and talked to Chad and interviewed him,
Correct.
and he gave you a verbal statement.
That is correct.
All right. Detective Hitchings, if you remember, that box phone that was used to call Domino's on that night, I think you said there was a message at one point in time, and then 2 minutes later was the call to the pizza place.
I believe so.
Other than that, were there any other calls used on that phone prior to those two uses?
Prior to those two at 2340 and 2342, there was no calls. There was incoming messages, I think.
All right. And those messages were from who?
Verizon.
All right. So those were just kind of set up messages or whatever type of messages, they were Verizon messages?
They were Verizon messages.
Okay, so the phone had not been used, no calls that were you got in the records, or anything that you know of on that phone?
Correct.
The individual that we have been talking about throughout this process, as both Erica Lyon at the time of the investigation and currently Erica Stefanko, do you see her in court today?
Yes.
Could you please point her out and describe what she's wearing?
Gray slacks, blue shirt, blue mask.
Your Honor, I ask that the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Desiree, thank you. All right, Attorney O'Brien?
Judge, in light of the fact it's 10:30, and also I'd like a couple minutes with my client.
Oh, okay, do you want to take just a brief recess?
Yes, sure.
That's fair.
Or the morning break.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, then we will go ahead and take a brief recess so that you can use the restroom. We'll sanitize the courtroom. Remember, you can't talk about the case with anyone. No one can approach you. You can't do any independent research at all. And then I will have you folks brought back in at 20 till 11 or 10:40. And then, Detective, I know you know this, but you're not permitted to discuss your testimony with anyone while you're under oath. So with that, we'll be back in 10 minutes.
All right.
Thank you.